I stood there under the freezing Boston night sky, gripping the small hand of my daughter, Katie. The towering iron gates of the Simmons mansion glittered under the Christmas lights, with colorful LED strands wrapped around the massive fir tree in the front yard, casting a dazzling glow that seemed to come from an entirely different world. A world I had never truly belonged to. I, Sean Murphy, 38 years old, was just a dock worker from South Boston. Worn-out clothes, boots caked in mud from an endless shift, and Katie, my 7-year-old girl, eyes sparkling with excitement, wore the red coat I'd bought on sale at a discount store, skipping beside me. "Daddy, why is Grandma and Grandpa's house so beautiful? Is Santa Claus real?" Katie asked, her voice clear and innocent, tugging my hand harder. I smiled, trying to hide the bitterness rising in my chest. How could I tell her that we were here not because of any warm invitation, but only because Rachel, my wife, Katie's mother, had sent a curt text? "I'm tied up with urgent work and can't come home for Christmas. You handle it." Urgent work? I swallowed that question out of love for my daughter. Katie was only 7. She deserved a real Christmas Eve, with a tree, gifts, and joyful laughter. Not huddled in our tiny apartment where the cold wind whistled through cracked windows. So I took a chance, loaded her into my rattling old truck and drove here, hoping the Simmons family, my in-laws, wouldn't turn us away. I took a deep breath and pressed the intercom. The bell echoed and the gates slowly swung open. Katie squealed with delight and pulled me forward. Inside the mansion, the holiday atmosphere was overwhelming. The Christmas party was in full swing, grand and lavish, with extended Simmons relatives, polished logistics industry figures, wealthy entrepreneurs, VIP guests, and partners they always wanted to impress. Jingle bells blared from high-end speakers. The scents of roasted meat and fine wine filled the air. The long banquet table was draped in pristine white linen, laden with delicacies. Roast turkey, plum pudding, and sparkling champagne flutes. I looked around feeling like I'd stepped into a Hollywood movie, everyone in tuxedos and glamorous evening gowns laughing and chatting merrily. But the moment we crossed the threshold, everything shifted. I felt it instantly, dozens of eyes turning toward us. Surprise, curiosity, and unmistakable discomfort, as if we were intruders invading their private domain. I squeezed Katie's hand tighter, forcing a stiff smile. "Daddy, why is everyone looking at us like that?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I bent down and whispered back, "It's okay, sweetie. They're just surprised. Come on, let's find Mommy." And then I froze. Through the crowd, I saw Rachel, my wife, 36 years old, standing by the bar, laughing intimately with a sharply dressed man. Black tailored suit, bright red tie, clearly an important guest of the Simmons family. She tilted her head, beaming, holding a glass of red wine, lightly touching his arm. In that instant, time stopped. My heart pounded, blood rushed to my head. The true meaning of her urgent work from the phone call was suddenly crystal clear. Not some office emergency, not a sudden meeting. This, flirting, radiant, while her husband and daughter waited at home. A wave of betrayal crashed over me, sharp as a knife to the heart. Abandoned, trampled. I had worked myself to exhaustion all week, come home drained, only to hear she was busy. And out of love for Katie, I had risked bringing her here. The worst part. Until now, the Simmons family hadn't made a single phone call or sent any invitation. As if I didn't exist. Douglas and Beth Simmons, my in-laws and owners of a massive logistics empire, had never accepted me as their son-in-law. From the day I married Rachel, they had seen me as a stain, a lowly dock worker from humble roots, unworthy of their precious daughter. I swallowed the rage building in my chest, not wanting to cause a scene that would upset Katie. She was still innocently excited by the twinkling trees and sparkling lights, unaware of the sudden heaviness in the air. But then Rachel turned. She caught sight of her husband and daughter at the door, eyes widening for a split second in surprise. Yet within moments, her familiar cold mask returned, the expression I had seen far too often in our marriage. She strode over quickly, keeping her distance, eyes scanning us like we didn't belong. No hug, no kiss, no warmth. "What are you doing here, Sean?" she asked, voice like ice, low enough so others wouldn't hear. Then, without waiting for an answer, she added sarcastically, "Someone like you shouldn't show up at an elegant party like this. I'm afraid you'll embarrass the Simmons family in front of the guests." I stood speechless. Her words stabbed like a blade. She didn't ask if I was tired after my shift, if Katie was cold in the winter night. Not a shred of concern for her own family. All that mattered was appearances before the crowd. Before the VIP guests and wealthy partners, the Simmons family was desperate to impress. Heat rushed to my face. My fists clenched until my knuckles went white. Katie looked up at her mother, eyes shining. "Mommy, I missed you so much. Why didn't you come home with me and Daddy?" Rachel glanced at her daughter, a fleeting look as if Katie weren't the child she had once cherished. Then she turned to me, voice flat and cold. "I told you I was busy. Why did you bring her here? This isn't the place for people like you." I squeezed Katie's hand gently, struggling to keep my voice steady, though my lips trembled with pent-up emotion. I repeated, incredulous, "You said you were busy? You said urgent work, couldn't come home for Christmas. But here you are, laughing, glowing, with that man over there." I drew a breath. "Why did you abandon us, Rachel? It's Christmas Eve. Families should be together." Rachel smirked, a contemptuous smile I had never seen before. "Family? What do you even know about family, Sean?" She crossed her arms, chin raised as if addressing an inferior. "I'm here for work. For our future. No, for my future and my family's. As for you and the kid, you can manage on your own." My heart twisted. Katie gazed up at her mother, innocent eyes blinking in confusion. Rachel shook her head in exasperation. "Don't make a scene here. You shouldn't have come. You don't belong, Sean." Those words, spoken right in front of our daughter, were so cold I felt a door slam in my face. My heart shattered. How much had I sacrificed over the years, working myself ragged to support the family, enduring contempt from her parents, all because I loved Rachel and cherished Katie. Now she stood there denying it all, as if we were a burden. I opened my mouth, about to say something, question her, beg for a scrap of affection from the wife I had once loved deeply. But then behind me, a deep, commanding male voice rang out, authoritative enough to make the entire hall pause for a moment. "What's going on here?" The voice boomed like thunder in the winter night. Katie flinched, instinctively gripping my hand tighter as the tension spread through the room. Guests turned in unison, eyes fixed on us. Sean, Rachel, and the man who had just spoken. The atmosphere shifted abruptly, heavy as an impending storm. The music still played, but conversation died, everyone waiting. I turned, heart racing, and saw Douglas Simmons, my father-in-law, head of the logistics empire, face flushed with anger. In that moment, I knew this Christmas Eve was no longer a celebration. It was about to unleash a chain of fateful events I could never have imagined. Douglas stood there, tall and imposing in his silver-gray suit, a blood-red tie stark against his shirt, eyes blazing beneath thick brows. He was my father-in-law, the head of Simmons Logistics, a massive shipping empire known to everyone in Boston, enormous cargo ships, multi-million-dollar contracts, and a family that prided itself on its social status. But right now, he wasn't the polished businessman from magazine covers. He was a raging beast, ready to tear apart anyone who dared trespass on his territory. Cold sweat trickled down my spine. I still held Katie tightly as she trembled beside me. "What's going on here?" Douglas bellowed, his voice echoing through the grand hall and drowning out the cheerful jingle bells from the speakers. Every guest, the sleek businessmen, the elegant ladies in sparkling gowns, turned sharply, champagne glasses frozen midway to their lips. He pointed straight at my face as if I were a burglar. "Who the hell are you to show up here?" Rachel stood behind me, face pale, but she didn't step forward. She just lowered her head, avoiding her father's gaze, and muttered, "Dad, this is Sean, my husband. He brought Katie." Her voice was barely audible, as if admitting my existence was an embarrassment. Douglas whipped around to her, eyes narrowing in fury. "This party is for important guests, Rachel. Major partners, VIPs we need to impress. Don't let your husband waste time or cause trouble for the Simmons family. His words lashed like a whip. I stood there, blood rushing to my face, ears ringing with humiliation. Important guests? What about Katie and me? Weren't we family? Douglas wasn't finished. He turned back to me, voice icy with contempt. A lowlife like you has no place in an elegant setting like this. Look at you, faded jeans, a jacket covered in dockyard mud. You think you belong here? This is the Simmons mansion, not your filthy shipyard. I was stunned, pain shooting down my spine like an electric shock. My heart pounded, my throat tightened. I had always hoped that at the very least my father-in-law would respect me as his daughter's husband, as Katie's father, his own granddaughter. I had worked myself to the bone to support my family, endured countless slights, all in the hope of one day being accepted. But it turned out I was nothing more than a stranger. A lowlife, a stain they wanted erased. At that moment I saw my mother-in-law, Beth Simmons, and brother-in-law, Eric Simmons, approaching to stand beside Douglas. Beth, with her elegantly styled silver hair and diamond jewelry glittering under the crystal chandelier, looked me up and down. Her gaze was pure disdain, as if I were roadside trash. She spoke slowly, her shrill voice carrying through the crowd. Oh my God, just look at that outfit. Coming from a family with no means, dressed so ordinarily. Cheap coat, filthy shoes. You're embarrassing me in front of the guests, Sean. Why don't you stay home and let Rachel entertain people who actually matter? Eric stood beside her, arms crossed, smirking. The spoiled golden boy of the Simmons family who had never worked a day in his life, even raised his phone to record video, treating it like cheap entertainment. Dock worker crashes high society party, great headline. Everyone check out how classy my brother-in-law is. His mocking laughter rang out, prompting a few nearby guests to stifle giggles, their eyes full of curiosity. Whispers spread through the crowd, fingers pointing. Why is someone like that causing a scene here? One society lady murmured to her friend. Some looked down their noses as if I were a party crasher. Others watched like it was an amusing disruption amid the roast turkey and champagne, a comical sideshow. The air grew thick. The murmurs spread like wildfire, making me feel stripped bare before the crowd. I tried to stay calm, taking a deep breath so my voice wouldn't shake. Sir, ma'am, I didn't mean to cause trouble. I just wanted Katie to have a real family Christmas. A warm night like other kids. She's only 7, she needs her mother. We drove all the way from South Boston just hoping to be together. My words were sincere, but they sounded so feeble in this opulent space. Katie looked up at me, eyes brimming with tears as if sensing some of my pain. But Beth Simmons stepped forward immediately, cutting me off with an icy voice, her gaze fixed on Katie. She scanned the child from head to toe and sneered in contempt. Family? You call that a family? That kid is just the daughter of a manual laborer. She has no manners and absolutely doesn't belong in a refined place like this. She waved her hand as if shooing away something annoying, her tone growing sharper. Don't let her dirty our floors with those muddy shoes and snotty tears. Get out. Don't ruin everyone else's Christmas. Her words stabbed like a knife. Katie didn't understand everything, but she felt her grandmother's anger and shrank behind me, clinging to my leg. Then she started sobbing uncontrollably, her childish cries echoing through the silent hall, making a few guests exchange uneasy glances. Daddy, does Grandma hate me? I want to go home. Katie wailed, tears streaming down her rosy cheeks. My heart shattered. She was innocent. She just wanted a happy Christmas, and yet she was being insulted like this. At that point, the father in me surged forward. Blood rushed to my head. I stepped protectively in front of her, voice louder than usual as I objected. You don't get to insult her. Katie is your granddaughter and she's innocent. How dare you say that? We came here for family, not to be humiliated. My words rang out, no longer restrained, causing even more commotion among the guests. Douglas's face turned crimson, eyes bulging. Unexpectedly, Douglas completely lost control. He charged forward like a wild animal, swinging his arm and slapping me hard across the face in front of everyone. The sharp crack silenced the party for several seconds. My cheek burned. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the humiliation scorching my soul. Many gasped in horror. Several ladies covered their mouths. Others looked at me as if I deserved punishment, eyes full of scorn. Eric laughed louder, still filming. "Nice one, Dad. Teach him a lesson." Douglas jabbed a finger in my face, roaring like thunder. "You and that kid, get the hell out of my house right now. Never show your faces here again. I have no son-in-law like you and that brat. Don't ever dream of calling me Grandpa." His words echoed, making Katie cry even harder as she trembled in my arms. Rachel stood right there but said nothing. She took half a step back, avoiding my gaze, neither defending her husband nor comforting Katie. All she cared about was saving face in front of the guests. She glanced around, forcing awkward smiles at nearby attendees as if apologizing for the minor disturbance. My heart tore apart. My wife, the woman I had loved deeply, now stood there like a stranger, choosing status over family. I scooped Katie up. She was shaking, sobbing into my shoulder, and turned to leave the mansion. Dozens of eyes followed, pity from a few kind guests, indifference from the neutral, contempt from the Simmons relatives. I walked out the door. The icy winter wind hit my face, but it was nothing compared to the pain inside. Behind me, the cheerful Christmas music resumed, laughter and conversation gradually returning, as if the wounds just inflicted meant nothing to anyone in that house. They carried on partying, clinking glasses, while my daughter and I walked away into the darkness, hearts broken. I carried Katie out to my old pickup truck, the biting Boston night wind slashing at my face like invisible blades. She was still sobbing softly in my arms, her small body trembling, tears soaking into my shirt. "Daddy, why did they chase us away?" Her voice was weak and broken, squeezing my heart like a vice. I didn't answer right away. I just kissed her forehead and whispered, "It's not your fault, Katie. Daddy will take you home, and we'll have our own Christmas, okay?" But deep down I knew those were just empty words of comfort. Our own Christmas? In our dim apartment with no tree, no gifts, and hearts full of wounds? I buckled Katie into the passenger seat, draped the old blanket over her, then slid behind the wheel. The engine coughed and sputtered to life, much like my life right now, worn out, exhausted, but still running. Boston's streets sparkled with Christmas lights on this holiday night, couples strolling arm in arm, children shouting joyfully around public trees. And me, driving in silence, broken only by the wind howling through the cracked window and Katie's steady breathing. Worn out from crying, she had fallen asleep in her seat, her tiny hand still clutching my sleeve as if afraid I'd disappear. Looking at my daughter asleep, her face still streaked with dried tears. My heart twisted with helplessness and guilt that crashed over me like a tidal wave. Why had I brought her there? Why had I thought the Simmons family would welcome us? I blamed myself, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Katie deserved a joyful night, not to watch her father get slapped and chased away like a stray dog. In that quiet moment, as streetlights streaked past the windshield like blurred streaks of light, I couldn't stop my mind from drifting back to the past. The years of marriage to Rachel and the way the Simmons family had always treated me with contempt. From our wedding day until now. It wasn't anything new. Tonight it had simply exploded, the final straw. I remembered clearly the first time I met the Simmons family 8 years ago. Rachel and I had been dating for a year. She was beautiful, vibrant, working at her parents' logistics company. I was just a dock worker, but I loved her sincerely. Rachel convinced me to come for dinner. "My family will like you, Sean. You're kind and good-hearted." But reality? The moment I stepped into that same lavish mansion, the one we'd just been thrown out of tonight, I felt the disdain. Douglas greeted me with a limp handshake, eyes scanning me from head to toe like defective cargo. "What do you do for a living?" he asked, voice flat but dripping with arrogance. "I'm a dock worker, sir," I replied, forcing a smile. Beth smirked. "A dock worker? Good. Physical health matters. It's just a shame." My daughter's world isn't in places like that. At dinner, they seated me at the far end of the table next to the help. Everyone talked stocks, yachts, European trips. I sat quietly, trying to join in but ignored like thin air. Rachel squeezed my hand under the table back then, whispering apologies. But that was the beginning of everything. From then on, the contempt lingered like a festering wound. Rachel often avoided introducing me to her friends or business contacts. Once, she threw a birthday party at an upscale bar, inviting her entire business crowd. I excitedly wore my only suit, but when I arrived, she pulled me aside and whispered, "Just sit here. Don't mingle too much. My friends, they're used to a different type. You understand?" Understand? I did. Understand that I was too lowly, a hindrance to her image. Those moments piled up, making me insecure, but I stayed silent, believing love would change things. My in-laws never hid it. They repeatedly hinted Rachel had married beneath her, like that Thanksgiving 2 years after the wedding when the family gathered. Douglas raised his glass, looking at Rachel. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart, but why didn't you choose someone more suitable? A businessman, a lawyer, instead of—" He glanced at me, leaving the sentence hanging as everyone chuckled. Beth added, "Exactly, Sean. You're just not up to our level. But what's done is done." I sat there, face burning, choking down turkey. Katie was only 3 then, giggling innocently on my lap, unaware her father was being humiliated. I wanted to walk out, but for Rachel, for our daughter, I stayed. Then the peak, the savings incident. 3 years ago, when Simmons Logistics hit a crisis. The shipping market tanked, they were drowning in debt. Rachel unilaterally withdrew our entire joint savings, about $250,000. That was money I'd scraped together my whole life. Overtime night shifts, pinching every penny from my dock worker pay, skipping vacations for extra hours. I dreamed of using it for a real house, a better future for Katie. But Rachel drained it all, transferring it to her parents without a word to me. When I discovered it, through a bank alert, I was devastated. I confronted her at home, voice shaking. "Rachel, what did you do with our money? That was our joint savings." She sat on the sofa, sipping wine, looking at me calmly. "I used it to save my family's company. My parents were in debt. If not, they'd go bankrupt. You don't understand business, Sean. The little you saved isn't much compared to my family's interests. They'll pay it back eventually. Not much. It was my blood and sweat." I shouted, "The Simmons family. What about our family? What about Katie? You didn't even ask me." She shrugged. "Do you think you understand business? This was a chance to turn things around for my family. You should be proud." Proud? I felt utterly betrayed, utterly belittled. But in the end, I let it go. Out of love, out of hope. Despite the hurt, I forgave everything, thinking that if I endured and sacrificed, one day I'd be truly accepted as family. I kept working grueling hours, supporting Rachel's career, even introducing a few dock contacts to help Simmons Logistics. I thought when they recovered, they'd see me differently. And they did recover, thanks to that money and some big deals. They grew wealthy again. New cars, European trips, lavish parties, but I wasn't respected more. I was treated worse, as if their success made me an even bigger embarrassment. Douglas once said outright, "Now that the company's stable, Rachel should rethink this marriage. You're only dragging her down." Beth excluded me from every important event, family weddings, company anniversaries. "Sean, stay home with Katie. Everyone here is important." Rachel changed completely, no longer sharing work details, future plans, or anything about her family. Evenings, she came home late, exhausted, scrolling her phone, barely asking about me or Katie. "I'm busy. Handle our daughter yourself." I felt like a boarder in my own home. Once I mustered the courage for a real talk. I sat beside Rachel, serious. "Rachel, we need to discuss this. Why do you and your family treat me like this? I'm your husband." She didn't get angry or surprised. She just laughed, a short, sarcastic laugh. "What do you want? For me to introduce you to my partners?" She tilted her head. eyeing me like outdated merchandise. What do you think they'd say knowing I married a dock worker? Do you realize how that affects my image? I was speechless. Rachel crossed her arms, voice turning cold. You should know your place, Sean. Don't try stepping into circles you don't belong in. My place? At the bottom? Never good enough? Unworthy of standing beside her? Those words cut deeper than any knife. They accumulated over the years, cracking our already fragile marriage further. But I clung on, endured every wound, for Katie's sake. Back in the present, on the rattling truck speeding through the night, I glanced at the seat beside me where Katie slept. Streetlights flickered across her small face, illuminating the remnants of dried tears, forcing me to face a painful truth. From our wedding day until now, I had never truly been part of the Simmons family. Not to her parents, not to her brother, and most heartbreakingly, not even to Rachel herself. They saw me as an obstacle, something disposable. Tonight, with Douglas's slap, with Rachel's silence, everything was clearer than ever. I was no longer a husband, a father, I was just an outsider. When we got back to the apartment, I carried Katie inside, my footsteps heavy on the creaky old wooden floor. The room was pitch dark, devoid of any holiday spirit, just the musty smell and a deathly silence. I laid her on the bed, tucked the warm blanket around her, kissed her forehead gently and whispered, "Good night, my little princess." Katie stirred in her sleep, murmuring, "Daddy, don't let Grandpa hit you anymore." Her words cut through my heart like a knife. I sat by her bedside for a while, watching her sleep, trying to hold back the waves of pain crashing over me relentlessly. My cheek still burned from Douglas's slap, but the physical wound was nothing compared to the humiliation and betrayal. Rachel, my wife, the woman I had once loved deeply, had chosen to stand by and watch, chosen silence, chosen fake prestige over protecting her family. When the house fell completely silent, broken only by the wind howling outside the window and the slow ticking of the clock, I sat alone in the dark living room, tossing and turning in my thoughts all night. I didn't turn on the lights, didn't eat or drink anything, just sat there, reviewing the entire marriage that had passed. Memories flooded back like an old, faded film, blurry yet painfully sharp. We met 8 years ago at a cafe near the docks. Rachel was beautiful, confident, with a radiant smile and sparkling blue eyes. I, a rough dock worker, had to summon all my courage to offer her a coffee. "You seem so genuine," she said. And we started. The early dating days were beautiful. Walks on the beach, ice cream, carefree laughter. I thought I was the luckiest man alive when she agreed to marry me. But after our simple wedding in a small church, everything changed. The Simmons family interfered, and Rachel gradually turned into a version of them, arrogant, prioritizing status over feelings. I remembered those first married nights when we still held each other as we slept, and Rachel whispered, "I love you," for your simple, kind, honest nature. But those words faded quickly. She started avoiding things, started comparing. "Why don't you try an office job? Staying at the docks forever, I'm embarrassed in front of my friends." I swallowed the hurt, thinking time would change it. But no, it only got worse. Tonight, everything exploded, and I realized this marriage had been cracked for a very long time. The small fissures had accumulated. Contempt from her family, Rachel's indifference, the drained savings account. Tonight was just the final drop that shattered everything completely. I couldn't go on anymore. I decided to end it all. Divorce. My heart pounded at the thought, cold sweat breaking out despite the freezing winter. I knew that if I divorced, I'd lose everything. This apartment rented in Rachel's name, the little assets I had, and perhaps even my job if the Simmons interfered. But after what happened, I had only one desire left, to keep Katie. She was my everything, the reason I lived. I couldn't let her grow up in that environment full of contempt. Dawn light filtered through the curtains, bringing the bone-chilling cold of the day after Christmas. I hadn't slept a wink, my mind swirling with vague plans. Around noon the next day, the sound of keys rattling echoed. Rachel came home, calm as if nothing had happened the night before. She walked in, still wearing the glamorous evening gown from the party, hair disheveled, a faint scent of wine lingering. No explanation, no glance at me. She went straight to the kitchen, poured herself water, treating me like I was invisible. I sat on the sofa, fists clenched until my knuckles went white. I hadn't slept all night, only listening to Katie's occasional sobs from her room. When Rachel emerged from the bedroom, hair still messy, face cold, the anger I'd held back finally boiled over. "Rachel, I have something to say to you." My voice dropped so low it sounded foreign even to me. She turned, frowning slightly. "I don't want to talk right now. I'm exhausted." I stood up, looking straight into her eyes as if at a stranger. "I want a divorce, and I want custody of Katie." The glass of water in Rachel's hand froze. A few drops spilled onto the floor. A heavy second of silence. Then, she burst out laughing, full of mockery. "Divorce? Sean, are you trying to act tough? You've lost your mind in anger." She stepped closer, smirking right in my face. "Without me and my family, you're nothing. Just a dock worker scraping by on cheap wages." I said nothing. She pressed on, smile dripping sarcasm. "You think leaving the Simmons family leaves you with anything? No home, no money, no future, and of course no chance of getting Katie. She needs to live with someone who can provide, not a lifelong manual laborer like you." I looked at her, and for the first time I no longer saw the woman I had once loved. Rachel suddenly screamed as if her pride had been struck. "You want divorce? Fine. But you'll walk away with nothing. The court will throw you out on the street. You think you can raise her? You're just a parasite." She hurled the glass to the floor. It shattered, shards flying everywhere. "You're not worthy to be my husband, not worthy to be Katie's father. Useless." She jabbed a finger in my face, voice shrill throughout the room. "My future is in a different class, Sean. And you'll always be that stinking dock rat, a burden I've carried for years." I stood motionless, letting her unleash all the pent-up contempt from those years. No arguing, no retorting, just listening, as if witnessing the final rope of our marriage being severed. When she panted from screaming too much, I said only one thing, clear and cold. "I've made up my mind. If you don't agree, see you in court." Rachel froze, face flushed with rage, mouth open but speechless. I turned, grabbed my coat, and walked out. The door closed behind me like a period at the end of a sentence. Outside, the wind whipped my face, but my chest felt lighter for the first time in years. Though the future ahead was pitch black at least, it was my own darkness. The days that followed were hell. I crashed at a coworker's place, worked myself ragged to forget the pain, but every night I thought of Katie. She called crying, "Daddy, why aren't you home? Mommy's really mad." I swallowed tears, promising I'd see her soon. A few days later, the divorce hearing came, swift and brutal like a storm. The Boston courtroom was cold, with polished wooden benches and the judge high above. I arrived alone with a cheap lawyer I'd hired in haste. "Rachel?" She entered with a formidable legal team, her parents and brother in tow. Douglas and Beth Simmons were there, seizing every chance to humiliate me in front of the lawyers, judge, and gallery. They sat in the front row, eyes sweeping over me like garbage. The hearing began, and Douglas stood first, voice booming. "Your Honor, my daughter Rachel is the one who should be filing for divorce. Sean Murphy is nothing but a leech, useless. Today we'll show him what someone like him loses when he goes against the Simmons family." Beth chimed in, shrill. "He's unfit to be a father. A dock worker, he can't provide for our daughter and granddaughter." Eric smirked from behind, whispering to the lawyers. The crowd in the room, reporters, acquaintances murmured, and I sat there, face burning, fists clenched until they bled. Just as they'd boasted with power, money, and a powerhouse legal team, sharp-suited lawyers with thick files, the entire proceeding tilted completely in Rachel's favor. They presented evidence. My low income, history of depending on the Simmons family, even dragging up the savings incident to accuse me of financial incompetence. My lawyer tried to argue, but they overwhelmed with fabricated proof and witnesses. Simmons' friends. I couldn't turn the tide. Every ruling went against me. I lost custody. Katie would live with her mother with only scheduled visitation. Lost the apartment. It was Rachel's. Lost most assets. Just a few personal items I'd bought, and even saddled with part of the legal costs. Thousands of dollars I didn't have. When the hearing ended, I stepped out into the cold, feeling the world shrink around me. Wind gusts whipped through the courthouse hallway, but the chill on my skin was nothing compared to the emptiness hollowing my chest. In just hours, everything that had been mine, marriage, dignity, fatherhood, had been stripped away with a flick of power and money. No home to return to. No Katie running to hug me every evening. Nothing left I could call family. I left the courthouse empty-handed with a heart heavy as lead. So heavy each step felt like treading on my own failure. But still I had to keep walking, because if I stopped, I'd collapse right there on those icy steps. After the hearing, I was forced to return to the old apartment to pack my belongings. That was the final right the court granted me, to collect my personal items before Rachel officially kicked me out. I drove my rattling old truck back, hands trembling as I held the key. The apartment was in the outskirts of South Boston, the place where we had started our married life full of hope. Now it was just a pile of shattered memories. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, an overwhelming emptiness enveloping every footstep in the home that once held so many memories. The air was heavy. The familiar scent of coffee and Rachel's perfume still lingered, but now it made me nauseous. The living room with the worn-out sofa where Katie used to sit drawing pictures. The kitchen where I cooked dinner waiting for Rachel to come home late. The bedroom with the double bed that now had only one side rumpled. I looked around, tears rolling down my cheeks without realizing it. The family photos on the wall, us beaming on the beach, Katie tiny in my arms, cut like knives. I took them down, stuffed them into a bag, and began packing. Katie was there, sitting on the floor playing with toys, eyes red from crying. Rachel stood with arms crossed at the kitchen door, gaze cold. Pack quickly. I don't want to see your face a second longer. I knelt before my daughter, trying to keep my voice steady, though my throat felt strangled. Katie, Daddy has to go away for a while, but I'll come visit you, okay? Be good for Mommy. She looked up, eyes brimming. Where are you going, Daddy? Why can't you stay with me? I want to go with you. Before leaving, I bent down and hugged Katie tightly, inhaling the scent of her hair. The last warmth before everything fell apart. She sobbed uncontrollably, her small hands clinging to my shirt, begging to come with me. Daddy, don't leave me. I'm scared. Her cries echoed through the room, tearing my heart apart. Rachel stepped forward, holding her back firmly, voice ice cold. Katie, stay with Mommy. Daddy's leaving. Stop crying. I turned away, unable to look back. Katie's wails as I closed the door ripped my heart to shreds. Every step down the stairs was agony, as if I were leaving a piece of my soul behind. I drove out of the city, each mile stretching endlessly. The Boston to Portland highway was over 100 miles, but to me it felt infinite. Every kilometer bringing back memories. Our wedding day, Katie's birth, the nights arguing with Rachel. Halfway there, I pulled over and called the company to quit. My boss sounded surprised. Sean, are you sure? You've been doing great. I choked back tears. Yes, sir. I have to go home to my folks. I'll come back to finish the paperwork later. The call ended and I drove on. The radio played a late Christmas song, but I turned it off. No more celebrations, just pain and loneliness. I arrived in Portland, a small coastal town in Maine where my parents lived. It was late at night. Snow blanketed the familiar road leading to the old wooden house by the sea. I parked in front, got out, shoulders heavy with my single duffel bag. Owen and Patricia, my parents, opened the door. Seeing their son standing there in the night, their faces lit with a mix of joy and sorrow. My father, Owen, with snow-white hair and a sturdy build from years as a fisherman, stepped out and hugged me tightly. You're home, son. My mother, Patricia, eyes red, pulled me inside. "Come in. It's freezing." No one asked many questions. They knew from my earlier call, but no probing, no blame. Owen lit the fireplace. Flames crackled cheerfully. Patricia draped a warm blanket over me. Everything happened in silence, yet for the first time in years I felt genuine family warmth. No contempt, no comparisons, just unconditional love. I sat by the fire holding the hot tea Mom made, tears streaming. "I'm sorry, Mom and Dad." In the days that followed, I lived with my parents, helping with every chore to distract from the pain. From fixing the leaky roof, climbing ladders and hammering nails in the drizzle, to assisting at the local dock where Dad had worked. I rose early, hauling nets with familiar fishermen. The salty sea air chased away some of the Boston memories. Life back home lacked material comforts. No luxury like the Simmons mansion, just a simple wooden house, modest meals of grilled fish and homemade bread. But it overflowed with laughter, something I'd lost long ago in the Simmons years. Dad told his old corny jokes. Mom hummed lullabies, and we sat on the porch watching the sea, chatting about nothing. For the first time in years, I slept soundly, no nightmares of contempt. One evening, under the warm yellow light in the living room, I told my parents the whole story. We sat around the wooden table, fire crackling. I started from the beginning. Meeting Rachel, the wedding, the Simmons contempt, the drained savings, the horrific Christmas Eve, the devastating trial. My voice shook, tears falling. I've lost everything, Mom and Dad. Lost Katie, lost it all. No scolding, no disappointment, just encouragement. Dad grasped my hand. "Son, you did your best. We'll get through this." Mom hugged me. "You still have us, and Katie will come back. Be strong." Their loving eyes, like when I was a child, made me sob, but tears of relief. For the first time I felt heard, loved without conditions. But that simple happiness didn't last long. One early morning, as the sun rose over the sea, Dad, Owen, suddenly clutched his chest in severe pain. He was mending nets in the yard when he doubled over, face ashen, gasping for breath. "Owen, what's wrong?" Mom screamed, rushing out. I ran to him, helping him lie down, heart pounding wildly. "Dad, what's happening?" he wheezed. "Chest pain. Hard to breathe." We called an ambulance and rushed him to the hospital in critical condition. On the way, I held his hand, praying silently. "Please, Dad, don't leave Mom and me." The small Portland hospital was frantic. Doctors rushed around. After stabilizing him temporarily with oxygen and medication, the doctor called us in. "Mr. Owen has severe coronary artery blockage. He needs bypass surgery as soon as possible. The cost for the procedure and treatment will be hundreds of thousands. Around $200,000 to $300,000 depending on complications." The doctor's words hit like lightning. We, a poor fisherman's family, where could we get that money? Mom and I emptied the family savings. A few thousand from their account, what I'd saved from my old job. But it was a drop in the ocean compared to the hospital's demand. We sold some old items, borrowed from neighbors, but scraped together only tens of thousands. In the panic of signing the surgical consent forms, my hand shook so badly I had to brace my whole arm on the table to hold the pen. A thought flashed through my mind like a cold blade. I once had $250,000, money I'd saved my entire life, every overtime night shift, every penny pinched in freezing dock winters. I had believed it was still there for our family, and that in a crisis it would save the people I loved. But now, standing in the hospital hallway, I held only a trembling consent form and a brutal truth. It had all vanished from my grasp long ago. The days that followed were hell. My father lay in the hospital, hooked to breathing tubes and machines, his skin pale, his breath shallow and weak. The doctor shook his head. "The surgery needs to happen soon, or—" I couldn't bear to hear the rest. My mother stayed by his bedside, holding his hand tightly, praying silently. And me? I paced the hallways, calling everyone I knew. Old friends, dock co-workers, begging for loans, but only scraping together a few thousand here and there. "Sorry, Sean, I'm strapped too," they said, and I understood. Life in Portland was already hard. Everyone was struggling. After days of worry and helplessness over my father's condition, I decided to go directly to the Simmons Company to see Rachel. I drove nearly 5 hours back to Boston, heart heavy, clinging to a slim hope that even if Rachel had been cruel to me, she wouldn't be indifferent to my father's illness. The highway stretched endlessly, light snow falling. Every mile brought memories. The Christmas Eve slap, the devastating trial, Katie's cries. My heart pounded as Boston appeared, the towering skyscrapers like monsters ready to swallow me. I parked in front of Simmons Logistics headquarters, the gleaming glass building, symbol of the wealth that had always excluded me. I walked in, clothes worn, hair messy from the long drive. The vast reception area gleamed. Uniformed staff eyed me suspiciously. "Sir, do you have an appointment?" the receptionist asked, professional but doubtful. "I need to see Rachel Murphy. It's an emergency. Family matter." She shook her head. "Sorry, no appointment, no entry. Please leave." I pleaded. "Please just call her down. I'm her ex-husband." But she summoned security and I was asked to go. I couldn't argue. Making a scene would only worsen things. I shuffled outside, waiting in the lobby amid the biting winter cold. Wind whipped my face, snow clinging to my shoulders, but I didn't move. Hoping to catch Rachel after work was my last fragile thread. I stood there for hours, feet numb, watching people come and go, wondering if I was foolish to return to the place that had treated me like a dog. Finally, at quitting time, the crowd poured out. I squinted and spotted Rachel emerging with a group of colleagues, elegant and confident in a fitted office dress, hair in a high bun, laughing brightly. Completely opposite my disheveled, desperate state, old jeans, dirty coat, face gaunt from worry. When she saw me, Rachel paused briefly, not out of concern but sheer surprise that I dared return. Her eyes widened for a moment, then reverted to familiar coldness. Colleagues glanced and whispered, but she waved them ahead. I approached, straight to the point, voice urgent but steady. "Rachel, my dad is seriously ill. Severe coronary blockage. He needs emergency surgery. I need the $250,000 you took from our joint account to save my father." Rachel's expression shifted instantly from surprise to anger. She crossed her arms, eyes so cold they made me shiver. She raised an eyebrow. "That money?" "I used it for the right purpose. My family. We're divorced, remember? It's no longer your concern. Don't come here begging." Her words twisted like a knife in my chest, but I stayed calm. "Rachel, my dad is dying. He's Katie's grandfather. You once called him your father-in-law. I'm not asking for all of it. Just part. Please?" She burst out laughing, a harsh, grating sound echoing in the company lobby. "Please, Sean, you're still the same. Divorced and still carrying that poor man mentality. Always begging, always relying on others. Aren't you ashamed?" She stepped closer, voice lower but sharper. "Who are you? A broke failure crawling up from the bottom of society to beg from me? My family gave you enough. Now get lost before I call security to throw you out." I stood there, staring at the woman I had once loved and trusted, now a complete stranger. I had nothing left to say. Only heavy silence she didn't even bother to acknowledge a second time. Her words rang out amid the exiting crowd. A few people turned to look. Heat rushed to my face, but I didn't argue. For Dad's sake, I endured. Rachel pointed at security, ordering them to remove me for disturbing the peace and damaging the company image. "Security. Get this man out. He's harassing me." 2 burly guards approached, hands on my shoulders. "Sir, please leave or we'll call the police." I knew resisting would make it worse. Arrest, more humiliation. I shuffled away amid strangers' stares, shame coating every step. Each stride echoed the Christmas Eve expulsion, chased away like a dog. I left without looking back, tears streaming, heart full of despair. What would happen to Dad? My last hope shattered. As I walked a short distance amid the rushing after-work crowd, suddenly someone called my name loudly. A man's voice, deep, warm, decisive. I stopped and turned to see a man standing a few meters away, tall, impeccably suited, calm demeanor, eyes that seemed to see through everything. He appeared about 50 with salt and pepper hair and sharp but not cold features. I didn't recognize him, had never met him, yet he felt vaguely familiar, like from a dream or a hazy moment. He approached, smiling faintly. "I'm Alexander Ward. I saw you at the Christmas party that night, at the Simmons mansion." In that instant I remembered. Amid the chaos and cruel insults that Christmas Eve, there had indeed been a man standing quietly in a corner of the hall, observing everything with thoughtful, inscrutable eyes. He hadn't joined in, hadn't laughed along, just stood there like a silent witness. Now that man stood before me, gaze calm and understanding, utterly different from every contemptuous look I'd endured from the Simmons family. The after-work crowd still rushed around us, horns blaring, light snow dusting his shoulders, but he stood there, solid as a rock amid the chaotic flow. I quickly wiped the tears still lingering on my cheeks, trying to keep my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Why did you call out to me? Do I know you?" But before I could ask more, the man spoke directly, saying he had been standing nearby and witnessed the entire conversation between Rachel and me just moments ago. His voice was deep, warm and clear, unhurried. "I happened to be not far away. I saw everything. How she spoke to you, how you held back your anger. It's none of my business, but it caught my attention." He said he had followed me not out of curiosity, but because he had something to consult with me about, his tone calm yet weighty, like that of someone used to command, making me instinctively straighten my posture. Consult? With me? An unemployed dock worker who had just been humiliated by his ex-wife on the street? I couldn't understand what a stranger, dressed so elegantly, exuding authority in a perfectly tailored suit, watch glinting under the streetlights, could possibly need from me. He looked like he'd stepped out of a movie about the elite, not the type to stop and talk to someone like me. But in his eyes there was no pity or contempt, only a rare sincerity I hadn't seen in a long time. I hesitated for a moment, glancing at the indifferent crowd, then nodded politely. "All right, sir, but I'm not sure how I can help." He smiled faintly and gestured. "Come on, you look freezing. There's a cafe nearby." We walked into a coffee shop near the Simmons Logistics building. The aroma of freshly ground beans spread warmly, a stark contrast to the skin-cutting cold outside. The place was crowded with office workers ending their day, sounds of grinding beans and lively chatter. But we found a quiet corner in the back by the window overlooking the street. I sat down, wrapping my hands around the hot latte he'd bought me, warmth seeping into my numb fingers. For the first time after hours standing in the cold, I felt less shaky, though my heart remained heavy. He sat across from me, posture relaxed yet naturally commanding. Once settled, the man extended his hand and introduced himself. "I'm Alexander Ward, chairman of Ward Global Holdings." He said it casually, like an ordinary name, but to me it was like thunder. Hearing that, I froze, my heart pounding so hard the coffee cup nearly slipped from my hand. Ward Global Holdings? I wasn't unfamiliar with the name. It was the Billionaire occasionally featured in financial papers and economic news. A diversified empire on the East Coast spanning real estate, technology, logistics, and investments worth billions. Alexander Ward, the tycoon respected in business circles who had appeared on Forbes with massive deals and a rags-to-riches story. I could hardly believe the man sitting calmly across from me, chatting like an old friend, was that larger-than-life figure. I'd read about him during lunch breaks at the docks, thinking people like him lived in a different world, one with no room for someone like me. "You're really Alexander Ward?" My voice cracked with astonishment. He nodded, smiling. "Yes, it's me. Don't look so shocked, Sean. We're all just people." I sat there, mind reeling. Why would a billionaire like him stop to talk to me? After what had just happened with Rachel, I felt like an absolute failure. No money, no home, no child, and now my father in the hospital. He was the embodiment of success and power, but he didn't let me dwell. Alexander asked about my current work, voice friendly like chatting with a peer. I honestly shared that I'd been a dock worker in South Boston and had just quit to return home and care for my family. Now, I have nothing left, just worrying about my dad, I said, voice choking as I remembered him lying there surrounded by beeping machines. Alexander nodded attentively, eyes showing no contempt or pity, only genuine focus, as if my story mattered as much as his billion-dollar deals. After a few minutes of small talk, he asked about Portland, life back home, about Katie, whom he'd overheard in the argument with Rachel. Alexander got to the point. He stirred his coffee, tone more serious. Today I had an important meeting with Simmons Logistics about a major transportation contract. High value, over $200 million a year. That's why I was here. I blinked, unsure why he was telling me, an outsider, but he continued. However, during my interactions with the Simmons family, I noticed several things that made me reconsider, both in how they run the company and how they treat partners and employees. That Christmas Eve, I saw how they treated you. And just now, with Rachel, it gave me pause. So he wanted the opinion of someone who had been closely involved with them for years, and more importantly, someone they had just mercilessly trampled. His words surprised me. I never imagined a billionaire would seek my advice, a man with no status or advanced education. I was just a dock worker, high school graduate, with business knowledge from newspapers and real-life experience. He had teams of advisors, lawyers, experts. Why me? I fell silent for a long moment, staring at my coffee, trying to gather my thoughts. Steam rose, hazy like my future. I thought of Dad in the hospital, of Katie, of the years of contempt. Finally, I looked up and spoke sincerely. Mr. Ward, I don't know much about big deals. I certainly don't have expertise to advise on the specifics you're discussing. I'm just a worker. I know how to load cargo and tie ropes. But if it's about professional ethics, human character, how they treat people, then I'll tell you everything I know so you can weigh it before deciding. My words were simple but heartfelt. I didn't want him to fall into the Simmons trap. People who valued money over humanity. Alexander listened seriously, as if this straightforward statement was exactly what interested him most. In that quiet corner of the coffee shop, I began recounting from the very first day I met Rachel and encountered the Simmons family, a wealthy clan that always looked at me with disdain. I met Rachel 8 years ago at a cafe near the South Boston docks. She was beautiful, confident, working for her parents' logistics company. I was just a dock worker back then, grinding through night shifts to make ends meet. We dated, and I thought I was the luckiest man alive when she agreed to marry me. But when I was introduced to the Simmons family, I paused, swallowing hard, vividly remembering that day. The lavish mansion, the elegant dinner table, Douglas and Beth greeting me with cold handshakes, their eyes scanning me from head to toe like inspecting substandard goods. They asked about my job, and when they learned I was a dock worker, their expressions changed. From that moment, everything began. I described the years of marriage, the upscale parties where I was sidelined, the times I was treated like a servant in their own circle. At every family gathering, they seated me at the end of the table next to the help. I tried to join the conversation, but they ignored me, talking about stocks, yachts, Europe, things I knew nothing about. Rachel used to hold my hand under the table at first, but gradually she changed too. She started avoiding introducing me to her friends, embarrassed when I showed up in old clothes at events. I felt like an outsider, like cheap decoration in their grand house. I spoke of the Thanksgivings and Christmases where I was relegated to the end of the table or not invited at all, and how the Simmons family always acted ashamed of my presence beside Rachel. The first Thanksgiving, they invited the whole extended family but seated me separately like a stranger. Christmas was worse. They sent gifts for Katie but didn't invite me. I stayed home, decorating a small tree, trying to make her happy, but my heart was full of bitterness. Alexander listened, occasionally murmuring in disbelief, his eyes darkening as I detailed the incidents. He didn't interrupt, just nodded, jotting notes in an expensive leather notebook. Then I recounted the recent Christmas Eve when Katie and I were chased from the mansion amid dozens of contemptuous stares. I brought Katie because Rachel said she was busy with work, but she was there, laughing with VIP guests. They drove us out like dogs. Douglas slapped me in front of everyone. Beth insulted Katie. Rachel stayed silent, not defending her husband or child. Katie's cries, they haunt me still. My voice broke. Tears rolled down. Alexander fell deeply silent, gripping his coffee cup tightly as if suppressing anger. Next came the unfair divorce trial, where the Simmons family's power and lawyers stripped me of everything. The apartment, assets, and custody of my daughter. They hired top attorneys, presented fabricated evidence, accused me of incompetence. Douglas stood up and humiliated me in court. I lost it all, only visitation rights on a schedule. My heart shattered, hugging Katie goodbye. Alexander exclaimed, "That's appalling. They used money to bend justice?" Finally, I described the afternoon meeting that same day when I begged Rachel to return the money. She had unilaterally withdrawn it to bail out her family, so I could save my father, only to face more humiliation. My dad is critically ill, needs surgery. I came back asking for the $250,000, money I'd saved my whole life. But Rachel sneered, "Poor man mentality." She called security to throw me out. Once again, I walked away in shame. Throughout, Alexander listened intently. At times, he murmured in disbelief. At others, he sat in deep silence, eyes darkening as if pondering something profound. When I finished, I paused, then said softly, "That's everything I know, Mr. Ward. I hope it helps you understand who they really are." I took a breath and voiced what I'd never dared admit aloud for years. To them, anyone without status is just trash. Alexander Ward nodded slowly, his eyes no longer carrying the aloofness of a billionaire but the understanding of someone who had seen life's dark corners. "You're brave, Sean," he said. "What you've shared today will help me make the right decision." Before leaving the table, he asked for my contact information. "I may need to discuss further," he said. I gave him my phone number, thinking it was just politeness. A man like him wouldn't need anything from a dock worker like me. I stood, bowed in thanks. "Thank you for listening to me. Truly, thank you." We shook hands, a firm, warm grip full of meaning. Leaving the cafe and stepping into the Boston evening wind, I felt a little lighter, as if for the first time in years I had spoken the truth I'd carried for so long. I didn't think much of it, just gave my number and drove back to Maine to care for Dad, completely forgetting the strange encounter with the billionaire. The drive to Portland was endless. I sped through the night, mind consumed with Dad's condition. Arriving home, Mom was waiting. "Did you get the savings back?" I shook my head. "No, Mom, but I'll find another way." In the following days, I stayed by Dad's bedside, wiping his sweat, praying silently. The meeting with Alexander felt like a dream. I forgot about it. But just 2 days later, the media exploded. Ward Global Holdings suddenly canceled a hundreds of millions-dollar transportation contract with Simmons Logistics. I was sitting by Dad's bed watching TV when the economic news flashed. Major shock. Ward Global terminates $200 million annual contract with Simmons. Reason unknown. The news rocked the industry. Headlines screamed, multi-million-dollar deal canceled at the last minute. Experts debated on CNN and Bloomberg. Partners flooded Simmons with calls. I watched in stunned silence, hardly believing Alexander had taken my words so seriously and acted so decisively. "He really canceled it?" I whispered, hand trembling on the remote. The cancellation hit Simmons Logistics immediately. Partners panicked and called. Banks reviewed credit lines. Investors demanded explanations. Simmons' stock plummeted. Headlines read, "Simmons on the brink of crisis." Douglas held an emergency press conference to reassure the public, but his tense face on camera said it all. Jaw clenched, eyes red, voice shaky. "We respect Ward's decision, but we will overcome this." Beth stood behind him, face ashen. Eric avoided the cameras. Watching the news, I stood at an emotional crossroads, astonished at the power of my own words, dazed with disbelief, unsure whether to feel joy or sorrow. Joy for justice? Sorrow because Katie was still with them? In a rare moment of my life, my voice, the voice they had despised, had shaken their world. I turned off the TV, looked at Dad sleeping, heart in turmoil. Life is truly strange. My father, Owen, lay there on the hospital bed, his skin pale under the harsh white neon lights of Portland Hospital, the heart monitor beeping steadily like a reminder that time was slipping away without waiting. My mother sat beside him, gripping his hand tightly, her eyes red from sleepless nights. And me? I didn't dwell too much on it. The news of Simmons faltering was just a distant echo. The only thing on my mind right now was how to scrape together enough money for the surgery, as Owen's operation date was fast approaching. The doctor had warned, any further delay could be life-threatening. We had emptied our savings, sold a few old belongings from home, borrowed from neighbors, but it still wasn't enough. Every night I lay awake, calculating every penny, praying for a miracle. But where was the miracle? I was just a failure, returning home empty-handed. Those days dragged on in endless anxiety. The small Portland hospital had long, echoing hallways filled with the strong smell of disinfectant, the squeak of gurneys and muffled sobs from nearby rooms. I stayed by Dad's side, telling old stories about childhood fishing trips to cheer him up. Remember, Dad, when I snapped the line and the big fish got away? He smiled weakly through the oxygen mask. Of course, son. You're still as clumsy as ever. Mom brought hot tea from home. We sat around the bed, trying to keep the atmosphere warm amid the chill of illness. But behind the smiles was gnawing fear. The surgery cost loomed like a monster, devouring every hope. One morning at the hospital, as I was signing papers to postpone the surgery due to insufficient funds, my heart sank to rock bottom. My hand shook so badly I had to brace my whole arm on the table to steady the pen. I was signing a consent to delay, a decision like a suspended death sentence. The doctor shook his head sympathetically. We'll do our best, but without the money. Mom stood beside me, tears streaming. Son, what are we going to do now? I didn't answer, just bowed my head, overwhelmed by helplessness. But then a staff member rushed over from administration, face flushed with urgency. Mr. Murphy, wait, the entire hospital bill has been paid in full. I stood frozen, thinking I'd misheard, ears ringing in the noisy hallway. The bill has been paid? Someone did this? The staff member confirmed again, voice firm. Yes, the hospital received full payment from a donor. Enough for the surgery and follow-up care. The operation will proceed today. I looked at Patricia, my mother, and we were both speechless, just clutching each other's hands, tears welling up in confusion over what was happening. My heart pounded wildly. Blood rushed to my head. Who paid my father's hospital bill? I stammered to the staff member, but she shook her head. Confidential information, sir, but it was a large transfer from a company. Mom hugged me, sobbing, Your father is saved. Thank God. We sat there in the hospital hallway, hugging and trembling, hearts overflowing with gratitude mixed with bewilderment. A miracle or a mistake? But the doctor confirmed, It's true. We're preparing the operating room now. That afternoon, the surgery went smoothly. It lasted 3 hours while Mom and I paced the hallway, praying silently, hands clenched until our knuckles went white. Finally, the doctor emerged, removing his mask and smiling. Mr. Owen is out of danger. The surgery was successful. He's stabilizing in recovery. Mom and I hugged and burst into tears of relief, hearts filled with gratitude for the money that had fallen from the sky and saved our family. Our cries echoed down the hallway. A few nurses smiled sympathetically. A nearby patient even clapped in congratulations. Mom whispered thanks to God, while I just held her, tears soaking her shirt. We waited outside recovery, watching Dad through the glass. He slept peacefully, machines still beeping but now sounding like a melody of hope. For the first time in days, I could breathe easier than ever, my shoulders light as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted. But the question haunted me. Who paid? Why? As soon as Owen stabilized, breathing more steadily and opening his eyes with a weak smile. "I'm okay, son. I went to hospital administration to inquire about the payer." The receptionist hesitated at first, flipping through files. "Confidential, sir." But after checking the system, she revealed the payment came from an account belonging to Ward Global Holdings. I was stunned, my heart skipping a beat. Ward Global Holdings? The very company of Alexander Ward, the billionaire I had met only once, in that Boston cafe. I stood frozen in the administration office, gripping the table to keep from falling. "Mr. Ward, he paid for us?" Mom looked at me worriedly. "Son, what's wrong? Do you know who paid the bill?" I briefly recounted the meeting. She hugged me. He's an angel." I knew I couldn't just accept such a debt in silence. I owed him thanks, and more than that, I needed to know the real reason. Why would a billionaire like him help someone like me? The next day, with Dad more alert, I drove from Portland to Ward Global Holdings headquarters in Boston. The long drive stretched on, but my heart was filled with hope and nervousness. The skyscraper towered into the sky, glass gleaming in the winter sun, a symbol of power and success. I walked in, plainly dressed, and told the receptionist, "I need to see Mr. Alexander Ward. It's Sean Murphy." Despite no appointment, the receptionist led me straight to the chairman's office with respect, as if they'd been expecting me. Mr. Ward instructed that if Mr. Murphy arrives, bring him up immediately. When I entered, Alexander looked up from his vast desk and smiled as if he'd known I'd come. His office was luxurious yet understated. Polished wooden desk, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a few abstract paintings and shelves full of economics books. "Sean, I've been waiting for you. Sit down." I sat in the soft leather chair, voice trembling. "Mr. Ward, I came to thank you. You saved my father. But why? To you, I'm nothing." I thanked him for saving my dad and asked why he'd done it for a near stranger. Alexander smiled, leaning back. "You saved my company more than you realize, Sean. I owe you far more." He explained that thanks to my warning and honest sharing, he had ordered his legal and audit teams to investigate Simmons' logistics more deeply. "After meeting you, I couldn't ignore it. I instructed a thorough review. Financial reports, old contracts, anonymous employee interviews. The internal investigation revealed serious wrongdoing at Simmons. Falsified financial statements by inflating revenue, overcharging contracts for kickbacks, exaggerating operational capacity to deceive partners. If we had signed, Ward Global would have lost hundreds of millions, even faced a prolonged scandal that could have been devastating. Alexander looked me in the eye. "Thanks to you, I canceled in time, avoiding a massive loss and a corporate scandal we might never recover from." He said, "You saved my company more than you know. I only did the bare minimum to repay you." I choked up, speechless. In my entire life, no one had ever valued my words or character like this. I, a despised dock worker, had saved an empire. Tears rolled down. You're too kind. I only told the truth." But Alexander wasn't done. He said the medical costs were a loan I could repay gradually through salary, and simultaneously offered me a job at Ward Global Holdings. "Repay over time, no interest, and I want you in operations, with your dock experience. This isn't charity, it's investing in a good person. I value your honesty, responsibility, and moral character, qualities I don't find in many." I was so shocked I couldn't speak. Just weeks ago, I'd been thrown out of a Christmas party and divorced penniless. Now life was opening a door I'd never dared dream of. I sat there, mouth agape. How am I worthy? I didn't go to college. I know nothing about big companies. He smiled. "Paper degrees aren't as important as character. Think about it, Sean." I left the office, mind spinning, heart full of gratitude and hope. In the days following my meeting with Alexander Ward, I returned to Boston and rented a small apartment near my new workplace, beginning the journey of rebuilding my life from zero. The apartment was in the suburbs, not luxurious like the Simmons mansion. Just a simple one-bedroom with a tiny kitchen and a balcony overlooking the street. I used the temporary loan from Mr. Ward for the deposit and bought a few basics. An old bed, a desk, and a small artificial Christmas tree to remind me of Katie. My first day stepping into Ward Global Holdings headquarters was overwhelming. The professional, disciplined, high-speed environment was completely opposite the dockworker life I'd known. The gleaming glass skyscraper, vast lobby with sharply dressed staff, non-stop clacking keyboards, and endless meetings on large screens. I wore a cheaply bought new suit, clutching my files, heart pounding as the receptionist led me to the operations department. Colleagues greeted me warmly. "Welcome, Sean. Mr. Ward instructed us to take good care of you." But then the work hit like a storm. New job, new processes, a flood of projects that overwhelmed me more than once. I had to learn supply chain management software, read financial reports, coordinate with international teams via Zoom. My first mistake, I misscheduled a cargo ship, causing a minor delay. My boss called me in. "Sean, first time, so I'll let it slide, but you need to learn faster." I made errors, stayed late endlessly, some nights so exhausted I fell asleep at my desk, head slumped on the keyboard, screen still glowing with data. Those nights I missed the old docks, the salty sea wind, rough joking co-workers, work that required muscle more than brain. Now everything demanded precision, speed, and strategic thinking. I was exhausted, sometimes wanting to quit. Can I do this? I'm just a dock worker. But with a thirst for learning, perseverance, and drive to improve, I didn't give up. I read management books at night, asked colleagues, took notes on everything. Alexander occasionally called me to his office for direct guidance on small details. "Sean, managing people isn't about giving orders, it's about inspiring. Read data like this. Don't just see numbers, see trends." He taught me to view problems holistically, not superficially. Don't blame the captain for a delayed ship. Check weather, prior supply chain. Thanks to that invaluable guidance, I gradually caught up, successfully handling small projects, like optimizing domestic routes, then larger ones, coordinating multi-million-dollar international shipments. Colleagues patted my shoulder. "You're progressing fast, Sean." Leadership took notice, and I felt I belonged. 2 years later, from a complete novice with no experience, I was voted in by leadership and promoted to regional operations manager, a position I'd never dreamed I was qualified for. The day I received the decision, Mr. Ward called me to his office and shook my hand. "Congratulations, Sean. You deserve this." I stood there in my proper suit, looking out over the city from the high floor, tears streaming down. From the man slapped at a Christmas party, I now managed a team of dozens with a salary 3 times my old one. My life improved day by day. Stable income, a healthy work environment with respectful colleagues, and especially regular visitation with Katie as per the court schedule. Each time we met, Katie hugged me tightly, chattering about school. I devoted every moment to making up for lost time, taking her to parks, getting ice cream, telling stories about her grandparents. Father and daughter grew closer than ever after that old shock. She was growing up, hair longer, smile brighter, and I felt alive again through her. While I was stabilizing my new life, Simmons Logistics spiraled into collapse. Major partners, already shaken by the Ward Global cancellation, pulled out one by one upon discovering financial risks. Headlines blared. After Ward, 3 more major partners canceled with Simmons over suspected fraud. Several clients sued for falsified transport reports, delays, and opaque compensation, sending the company's reputation into freefall. Banks tightened credit lines, demanding repayment. Investors called for independent audits and emergency shareholder meetings. Media relentlessly covered management scandals. Simmons inflated reports, deceived partners. Douglas appeared on TV, gaunt and strained, trying to reassure but voice trembling. "We're conducting an internal review and will be fully transparent." But it was too late. In under 2 years, Simmons Logistics officially declared bankruptcy, sold off cheaply to a rival. Headlines showed images. Logistics empire crumbles. Simmons liquidates assets. The Simmons family was forced to sell the lavish mansion, the site of that horrific Christmas party, liquidate cars and property, and move into a modest rented apartment on Boston's outskirts. Douglas, once striding proudly at press conferences, now avoided media, barely leaving home as his reputation and dignity lay in ruins. He aged visibly, hair snow-white, living in seclusion, dodging calls. Beth fell into depression, shunned by the elite circle she'd proudly belonged to. Friends turned away, parties ended. She took to bed with sedatives. Eric was unemployed, spiraling into alcohol, fights in bars, debts, and social isolation. Rachel couldn't escape the vortex. Jobless, reputation destroyed, former admirers turning away. From a life of luxury, she plummeted to the bottom, struggling with debt and humiliation, nothing left of her former arrogance. When I heard the news from papers' old acquaintances, I stood quietly on my apartment balcony, gazing at Boston's twinkling night skyline. Inside me, there was no gloating, no vengeful joy, only a faint lightness like a breeze clearing old clouds. I simply thought, every action in life has a price. It's the law of cause and effect, and the Simmons family had just paid the exact cost for their cruelty and arrogance. I harbored no hatred. Hatred only hurts oneself. I only felt sorry for Katie, but she'd be okay because I was there for her. In the years that followed, my new life flowed peacefully like a calm river after a storm. My job at Ward Global Holdings was stable. As regional operations manager, I was busy but fulfilled, handling large and small projects, short business trips, and earning respect from colleagues that made me feel I truly belonged. My father, Owen, fully recovered after the surgery, returning to his coastal fishing trips in Portland, his snow-white hair fluttering in the salty wind, smiling more and telling old stories during my weekend visits. My mother, Patricia, was joyful too, tending flowers in her small garden, sending homemade baked goods to Boston for me and Katie. And Katie? She grew day by day in my full love and care. Evenings reading books together, weekend outings, and tight, warm hugs that gradually healed old wounds. I remember clearly the early days when Katie officially came to live with me, but that came later. At this point, 2 years into my new job, my life had found its rhythm. I bought a small house in the Boston suburbs, not extravagant like the Simmons mansion, but comfortable enough for us two. Cozy bedrooms with floral wallpaper Katie loved, a spacious kitchen for cooking her favorites, spaghetti with meat sauce, weekend pancakes, and a modest backyard with rose bushes she planted herself. "Daddy, the flowers bloomed," Katie would shout every morning, running out with her little watering can, hair flying in the breeze. I'd watch from the window, heart full of peace. My salary from Ward Global was steady, enough to send money home to renovate my parents' house. New leak-proof roof, fresh white paint, modern kitchen for Mom, and a porch swing for Dad to watch the sea. Dad would call, "Son, the house looks great. Bring Katie next time." Mom sent photos of her new garden. "Come visit soon." Our life wasn't luxurious, no fancy cars, no parties, but overflowing with laughter and warmth I'd never had in my old marriage. Evenings, Katie and I sat by the fireplace. She'd talk about school, I'd tell stories of Grandpa teaching me to fish. No more contemptuous glances, no more sarcastic jabs, just simple, genuine love. But life always holds surprises. One weekend afternoon, as I prepared dinner, stir-fried vegetables with grilled chicken, aromas filling the kitchen, the doorbell rang. The chime sounded unfamiliar on that cool autumn day, golden leaves drifting in the yard. I wiped my hands on the apron, walked to the door, and froze when I saw Rachel on the porch. She, my ex-wife, once proud in glamorous gowns, looked so worn I almost didn't recognize her. Face gaunt, cheeks sunken, figure thinned in an old coat, eyes desperate and red from crying. Hair messy, no longer elegantly pinned, clutching a cheap handbag. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" I asked, surprised but not harsh. She looked at me, voice trembling. "Sean, can I come in? I need to talk." I hesitated a moment, then opened the door wider, leading her to the living room. Katie was playing in her room. I told her, "Sweetie, Daddy's talking to a visitor for a bit." Rachel sat on the sofa, hands shaking around the glass of water I poured, then said straight out that her family was completely ruined. Parents drowning in debt, brother Eric gone after more financial troubles. "My dad, he's bankrupt, Sean. Bank seized everything, the mansion sold, we're renting a tiny apartment on the outskirts. Mom's severely depressed, hospitalized for months. Eric, he's alcoholic, gambling, disappeared now. I lost my job. No one hires me because of the company scandal. My family has nothing left." Her voice broke, tears streaming down her hollow cheeks. I sat across from her, listening with unusual calm. No anger, no pity, just the objectivity of someone deeply scarred. Rachel choked out a plea for a chance to reconcile, saying for Katie's sake we could try again, start over. "Sean, I was wrong. I know I was cruel to you, but for Katie, she needs both parents. We can begin anew. I'll change. Please give me a chance to make amends." She grasped my hand, voice begging, eyes glistening with tears. In that moment, memories flooded back like waves. Douglas's slap at the party, Beth's venomous barbs, Rachel's cold silence that Christmas Eve, the drained savings without a word, the trial where the Simmons power crushed me. I gently withdrew my hand, firm but calm. I wasn't angry, surprisingly serene, enough to stun even her. I pulled my hand back, voice steady and low. "Rachel, you're too late. For years I was despised, seen as a burden, treated like I didn't deserve to exist. Even when my dad was dying, your family didn't care. Remember, I stood outside your company begging you to help him. And you had security throw me out like a dog." Rachel trembled, shaking her head slightly, tears falling freely. "Sean, I was wrong. I regret it. I was blind." I interrupted gently but clearly. "I once loved you, Rachel. I sacrificed everything to build this family. But you chose status, chose that arrogant Simmons name over us." Rachel sobbed, clutching her sleeve as if for support. "I know. I've lost everything, Sean. I have nothing left. Only our daughter. And I want to make it right." I looked deep into her eyes, seeing no trace of her old pride, only the remnants of a shattered life. "I don't hate you, Rachel. Hate only hurts me more, but I can't go back to someone who once saw me as trash. Trust is dead and marriage can't live without it." I took a slow breath, then said the most important thing. "Katie needs a stable home, not one filled with contempt and pressure. If you truly love her, let her stay with me. I'll love and care for her the best I can." Rachel looked at me through tears, lips quivering. I'll think about it. Just please, don't hate me." I nodded slightly and opened the door. "I don't hate you. But between us, this is the end." She stepped out, smaller than ever, glanced back once before descending the steps. I closed the door, gently but decisively, like ending an old life. Outside, cool autumn wind rustled the porch, golden leaves drifting down. I stood there a long while, feeling an odd peace. No anger, no regret. Only the relief of finally stepping out of the darkness. A few days later, light Boston autumn rain pattered like belated tears, soaking the roof and wet streets in a melancholy symphony. I was reading in the living room, coffee aroma wafting from the kitchen, rain tapping the window when the doorbell rang. I rose, opened the door, and froze. Katie stood there with her small backpack, raincoat soaked, while Rachel lingered behind, eyes red in the gray downpour. Katie looked up, eyes shining, called Daddy, full of love, and rushed into my arms, her small body shivering from the cold. Rachel stayed outside, not entering, voice faint through the rain. "Sean, I'm bringing her to you. I'm not fit to be a mother anymore. Take good care of her. I was wrong, from beginning to end." Without another word, she touched Katie's head one last time, nodded to me in pain, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the gray rain. figure swaying under heavy drops. Katie hugged me tightly. "Daddy, Mommy said I can stay with you forever. I'm so happy." I quietly closed the door, realizing this was the last time Rachel would appear in our lives. My heart pounded, tears streamed, not from sorrow but joy mixed with emotion. Katie was mine forever. I held her close, whispering, "I love you. Forever." From that day, Katie and I lived happily and peacefully. I bought a cozy house just right for us two, planted flower beds in front that she adored, red roses, yellow daisies, fragrant lavender bushes. She tended them herself, watering every morning. "Daddy, aren't my flowers pretty?" I smiled. "The prettiest in the world, sweetheart." I renovated the old family home. New leak-proof roof, fresh white walls, modern stove for Mom, and a swing for Dad to watch the sea. My Ward Global salary let me care for my parents diligently. Monthly remittances, frequent visits. Our life wasn't extravagant, no yachts, no parties, but brimming with laughter and warmth I'd never known in my old marriage. Evenings I cooked. Katie set the table. We joked over little things. She grew up, excelled in school, drew beautifully. I proudly told colleagues, "My daughter's a future artist." On free weekends, I took her to visit her grandparents. Katie ran wild in the yard of the seaside wooden house in Portland, giggling, chasing chickens, picking wildflowers. Grandpa and Grandma sat on the porch, Dad with his old fishing rod nearby, telling sea tales. "Your dad was so clumsy back then, always snapping the line." Grandma hugged her granddaughter, homemade pies fragrant. "My grandbaby's growing so fast." Katie cheered. "Grandpa, Grandma, can I take a chick home?" I stood there watching that simple scene, blue sea murmuring, salty breeze, laughter echoing, and reflected on the stormy journey I'd endured. From that horrific Christmas Eve, Douglas's slap, Rachel's betrayal, the shattering trial, Dad's illness, to meeting Alexander and my new job. Those pains were scars, reminding me of resilience's strength. I realized, sometimes losing everything is how we find what truly belongs to us. Losing marriage for peace, status for character, money for true love, and the lesson I'd share with anyone in despair. Never underestimate the value of kindness. Honor, dignity, and decency may not make you rich instantly, but they always lead you to where you belong. I stood under the old porch, sea wind whispering, Katie running to hug my legs. "Daddy, I love you most." I held her, gazing at the vast ocean, heart full of gratitude. Life is beautiful in its own way.